welcome. This is Jim Morose, and this is Season 1, Episode 5 of A Republic Always. Okay, so we've been working with the PragerU video series on the Constitution 101. So this session we're going to be talking about sessions 3 and 4, which 3 would be the limited powers of Congress, and 4 is going to be the limited powers of the executive branch. Although the executive branch has a little more power than the legislative branch, it's very powerful. And then, of course, we'll get it next episode. We'll get into the judiciary. So those are the 3 branches of government that we're going to kind of focus in on right there. But and to recap, the first 2 sessions we did the introduction to the Constitution that kind of focused on the fact that this is a republic, not a democracy. There's a big difference. The Founding Fathers and the world in general kind of knew that democracies were not very good because it's just basically it's mob rule, as you'll see when you see the videos. That's what they're afraid of, and it's the tyranny of the majority of people who get out. It's kind of like what's happening today when all these people get out and protest, and it's like you think that everybody believes what these people are protesting about, supporting Hamas and supporting Black Lives Matter. That's just mob rule. And he with the most power and strength and numbers win. So, but that's not what this country's founded upon. This country is founded upon we the people to be represented, and that's why the Constitution is such a valuable document, which a lot of us don't quite understand, and I'm still trying to learn all the ins and outs and the nuances. It's because when you read some of the some of the documents, like the we had the Federalists were the papers. It wasn't a book at the time. The Federalist was written by John Jay Hamilton and I can't remember who the other guy was, but at any rate, there was 3 founding fathers that wrote letters, and they signed them Pluvius, so no one knew who they were. Pluvius was like the publican. It's in the Roman Empire, and so they wrote those into the New York papers, and it went into all the papers to explain and defend why we needed the Constitution and what the Constitution was about. And as you'll see when we progress in here, it was very difficult to make that transition. After we won the Civil War, we had the Articles of Confederation that held us together, and that's what we were operating on. But without a central government, the Articles of Confederation didn't really account for the leadership in the executive branch and how who's going to be controlling all this stuff. And so that's why they came up with the Constitution and came up with the president. And basically the whole concept of this is to be citizen politicians, citizen leaders. Right now we've perverted that beyond control, because now we have a professional political class who, once they get elected, they stay in, and we don't vote them out. We really need to stop re-electing all these people and start getting and rotating them and getting fresh citizens in there to represent we the people, and not because these guys stay in there a little too long, and it's very difficult to they have opposing interests. They're not really serving we the people. They pretend they are. They sound like they are. They talk like they are, but they're not really working for the best interests of the people and the country, as very well evident in the last several years of we'll just say that we really need to all focus in on how the country should be run and not the way it has been running. Okay, but in light of that, we just want to focus on, like I said, we're going to start with the with a video of the limited powers of Congress and what's up with Congress as far as how that should work. So without further ado, we'll just go to the video of the Congress and what their limited powers are. Okay, thanks.
We the people of the United States. These are the words that open the American Constitution. We take them for granted now, but at the time they were written, they were earth-shattering. If you think that sounds like an exaggeration, consider this. No government had ever come into existence based on a document written for the people and approved by them. It makes perfect sense then that the most immediate and accountable branch of the government, the legislature, would be the first item on the Constitution's agenda. This is Article 1. It's divided into 10 sections. Section 1 creates a bicameral legislature. That is, a legislature made up of two separate entities, a House of Representatives and a Senate. Thus, the theme of the Constitution is immediately suggested. This is going to be a government in which power is both limited and shared. Section 2 describes how members of the House of Representatives are to be chosen. To run for office, you must be a citizen, reside in the state you're representing, and be at least 25 years of age. It's easy to miss, but at the time, this was another startling feature of the Constitution. Almost anyone could be a candidate for Congress. The citizen politician is an American innovation. Section 2 also describes who could vote and how many people it takes to make up a congressional district. This shall be determined by adding to the whole number of free persons and 3/5 of all other persons. This last phrase refers, of course, to slaves. It should be noted that the word slave does not occur in the Constitution. The framers kept it out for two reasons. One, they recognized it would not play well in a document that was all about freedom. Two, they believed that slavery would fade away with time. But it did exist in the framers' here and now, so it had to be dealt with. The Northern abolitionists, those who were for abolishing slavery, didn't think slaves should be counted at all. Why? Because if slaves were counted, the population of the southern slave states would be increased, and consequently the political influence of the anti-slavery North would be decreased. Of course, the southern states wanted their slaves counted as 5/5, that is, as whole persons, so that the population of the slave states would be greater and give the South more power in the House of Representatives. The 3/5 compromise came after much fierce debate. Neither side was fully satisfied, but the country stayed united and got a constitution. No small feat. Section 3 concerns the second legislative body, the Senate. Whereas members of the House of Representatives are elected by the people directly and serve 2-year terms, senators are to serve 6-year terms and are chosen by each state government. Populous states would have more representatives than less populous ones, but every state would have the same number of senators, 2. This gave the states an equal share of legislative power. The minimum age requirement to be a senator was set at 30. Sections 4, 5, and 6 establish the basic operating rules, when Congress shall meet, what constitutes a quorum, what to do with disorderly members, and so on. Section 7 sets out the process for enacting legislation. A bill must receive the consent of both the House and the Senate to become a law. The President is also involved in this process. He can veto legislation. His veto, however, can be overridden by a 2/3 vote by both houses of Congress. Passing laws, which by definition are restrictions on freedom, is not meant to be easy. It's meant, unless there's overwhelming support, to be hard. Section 8 lists the legislature's many responsibilities, such as establishing and equipping the armed forces, coining money, and regulating interstate commerce. Perhaps the most important of these responsibilities is articulated in the Taxing and Spending Clause, which allows Congress to collect taxes and to spend for the national defense and general welfare. Sections 9 and 10, almost as a counterweight to Section 8, conclude with a list of government restrictions. No one can be convicted of a crime without a trial. Laws can't be made retroactive. And habeas corpus, the right to see a judge if you are arrested by the police, can't be suspended except in case of invasion or rebellion or when the public safety requires it. The framers understood the need for a strong central authority, but they also knew well that such authority, without clear checks and balances, could and probably would become despotic. A government of limited powers could not easily threaten our foundational rights of speech, assembly, worship, and self defense. It was a grand experiment, and like any experiment, nobody knew if it would work, but it did. I'm John Yoo, professor of law at the University of California, Berkeley, for Prager University. Thank you for watching this video. To keep PragerU videos free, please consider making a tax-deductible donation.
Welcome back. Okay, so as you can see, the Congress, it's all clearly defined that they have limited powers. They really need to back off on some of the things that they're doing. I mean, as you can see, it was very clear that we needed citizen politicians, and we really need to, focus. I mean, there's an issue now in Texas with the redistricting, and so that was one of the things they were talking about, how to create and maintain the districts of the congressional districts. And so, of course, the congressional districts, and then it rolls down into, your state and your local districts. So it's all one whole process that just keeps repeating itself. And so a lot of people have never heard of the term gerrymandering. Well, I'll give you a real life prime example of what gerrymandering really is. So I don't know if anybody knows who Bob May is. No, Bob May is a Republican who lives in Peabody. And he ran against Sally Kearns several years ago, a couple of terms ago, and he came pretty close to beating her. So when they had to change the districts, they magically, Bob May is now not in the district that Sally Kearns represents, so he couldn't run against her. How convenient. And so that's what gerrymandering is. I mean, to get that specific and to get that, minuscule, it's very difficult to see what's happening with that. So all I can say is we really got to watch it. And again, the Congress and the Senate need to be, filled with representatives that represent the people from the states. As it's a fair mixture. And it was very calculated and thought out to help us, run the government, very, as I get the "We the People" tie on, we the people need to be represented and supported by Congress and the Senate and the executive branch and the judicial branch. And so, it's pretty interesting how they go through all this. There's 10 sections of the article that drives the Congress. Article 1 is the Congress, and it goes through how the legislature and the redistricting and the Senate, and sections 4, 5, and 6 are all about the rules that govern how they should be doing this stuff. And that's pretty clear. And then the legislative laws, they're not supposed to be easy to implement. They need to be debated and focused up front, live and in person, and not hidden behind closed doors and all these backdoor deals and everything else. And the worst and the biggest insult to this our form of government is these omnibus bills, where they put all this pork and crap into one bill, and so you could make 25, 30, 40 bills out of one of those omnibus bills because, I'm not going to sign it because this is in it. That's got to go. Those things that people have problems with, they need to be pulled out and separated because they're not part of the whole bill. We need these bills to be what they're named. They name these bills like, oh, they're going to fix healthcare and this and that, and they put all this other crap in there, and it's like, what have they done? They've done us a great disservice, is what they've done. And they're self-serving themselves while giving the illusion that they're helping we the people. And these omnibus bills are terrible, and that was like Section 7, like I said. You know, how to create the bills. It shouldn't be easy, and they need to have some debate up front, close and personal about that. Section 8 is all about the taxes and the money. And then, you know, 9 and 10 are the restrictions. In fact, well, Owen, let's just slap up picture. I'm lost here. Yep. Picture number 2. Picture number 2. This is one thing that really interests me, is the fact that Section 9 and 10, you know, you can't be convicted without a trial, but Section 10 goes through the fact that you can't create a retroactive law. That means, like, you can't pass a law that says, well, you know, we don't like the way Chevy cars are, so Chevy cars are now outlawed. Well, that's what, but what they're really doing is, like, you can't have an AR-15, or you can't have this kind of gun or that kind of gun. We're going to outlaw that. So it's like, well, wait a minute, they were legal for the last 40, 50 years, all of a sudden, no. So you can't do that. You can't pass a law and then force people to turn in their guns or turn in their cars or whatever it is. You start with guns, what's next, right? Refrigerators, cars, whatever. You know, pick your poison. But, you know, it's unconstitutional to pass a law that is retroactive. You just can't do that. And so we gotta really, you know, hold the feet to the fire of these legislators that keep doing all this tomfoolery. And you know, it's just a little tough to watch some of these things. And like I've said, if I said it once, I said it 1,000 times. You know, there was an effort at one time, 10, 20, 30 years ago, and they keeps coming up every now and then, that in order, you know, every legislation should have a site where, in other words, what part of the Constitution gives you the right to implement this law, you know? And so, but they said, no, we can't do that. Well, of course they can't do that, because half the things they do are not even close to being constitutional. And it's clearly evident. You know, we're supposed to promote the general welfare, not provide it, okay? There's a difference between those two words. But, okay, so here we go. Now we're gonna go into the Senate, okay? So the Senate, no, I'm sorry, not the Senate. The Senate and the Congress and the House of Representatives, they're all that covered that in Article 1. So we're gonna go to Article 2 with the President. So Article 2 with the President is, we'll just go to the video right now, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about it. Okay.
How much power should we give to the president? This was one of the most vexing and critical questions facing the framers of the United States Constitution in the summer of 1787. To be effective, the president had to be perceived, both in times of war and peace, as the leader of the nation. For this to happen, he would have to be given significant authority. Americans learned this lesson in the years following the Revolutionary War, when the nation floundered under the Articles of Confederation, which had no provision for a chief executive. But this chief executive couldn't be made so strong that he could become a tyrant. Americans fought a long and bloody war to get rid of one tyrant, the English king, George III. Nobody wanted to install a new one in his place. The framers' answer is found in Article 2. The opening sentence reads as follows: "The executive power shall be vested in a President of the United States." This might sound straightforward, but it was anything but. Here's why. The vesting clause of Article 2, as it's known, differs significantly from the vesting clause of Article 1, which concerns the powers of Congress, the House of Representatives, and the Senate. Article 1's vesting clause states, "All legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States." It then goes on to list those limited powers. That's it. Congress can't do anything else. There are no such limitations specified in Article 2. The difference is subtle, but important. Whereas Congress is given specific responsibilities, the President is given broad responsibilities and wide discretion as to how he fulfills them. This is part of his executive authority. And just what is that executive authority? This is spelled out in Sections 2 and 3. The President is the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Services. He sets military policy. He makes treaties with foreign countries. He sets foreign policy. He appoints his own advisors, what became known as his cabinet. He sets domestic policy. He appoints judges to the Supreme Court. That obviously gives him a big say in judicial policy. And finally, he shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed. This list is at once brief and vast because there's so much involved in all these duties. Indeed, the President stands at the head of the entire administrative apparatus of the federal government with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. For example, if the President can appoint federal officials, it stands to reason that he must be able to fire them too. When you realize that enforcing the law involves layers and layers of people, from department heads to federal law enforcement to government lawyers, all of whom are accountable to the President, you start to grasp how much power the chief executive has. So how did the framers keep the President in check? First and foremost, they gave Congress the power of the purse, the power to fund the operations of the federal government. Congress can restrain the President by withholding funding. The President literally can't buy a light bulb for a lamp in the Oval Office without a congressional appropriation. If the President proposes to add a new federal agency or to launch a war, Congress can bring his plans to a halt simply by refusing to fund them. The Constitution strikes a similar balance in foreign affairs. The President, as Commander-in-Chief, controls the strategy, tactics, and deployments of the U.S. Armed Forces and also dictates U.S. foreign policy. Only Congress, however, has the power to declare war, and the Senate, by a two-thirds majority, must consent to any treaty negotiated by the President. Congress also has the power to impeach the President in cases of serious misconduct, treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. But the bar for impeachment is set very high to protect the President's independence from Congress. Finally, the framers made the President accountable to the people. If the people are dissatisfied with his performance, the people can vote him out. And they don't have to wait long. They get a chance every 4 years. Before the U.S. Constitution, no country had ever had a leader whose fate was so dependent on the will of the people. At the same time, the founders had no patience for pure democracy, which they considered no different than mob rule. This is why presidential elections are not determined by popular vote, but by the Electoral College, as outlined in Article 2, Section 1, yet another guard against tyranny, this time the tyranny of the majority. It's often said that the President is the most powerful man in the world. This is undoubtedly true, but he's not more powerful than the Constitution. Article 2 made sure of that. I'm John Yoo, Professor of Law at the University of California, Berkeley, for Prager University. Thank you for watching this video. To keep PragerU videos free, please consider making a tax-deductible donation.
All right, welcome back. So again, as you can see, the President has just a little bit more power and a little bit more, range of authority than the Congress. But yet, the President is in check with the pocketbook. Only Congress can allocate money and funds and raise taxes, lower taxes. So anytime a president's taking credit for, the lower taxes or whatever it is, it's the Congress that's actually doing that. I mean, the President can drive the bus and he can, say he wants to do these things, but Congress is the one that has all the power to do that. But the President, again, he's elected by the people, and they have an agenda, and they ran on a platform, and they need to be able to implement that platform, and we need our representatives to support the things that are good for the people, good for the country, and bad, and not put up with this tomfoolery. I was joking with a few people the other day, and it was like talking about, again, who owns the money? It's Congress. And so, our feet are held to the fire with our credit score, right? You got to call up and find, can I get a loan? Well, what's your credit score? And it's like, oh, your cash flow, your debt ratio, and all this other stuff. Well, the country, its credit rating is probably below zero. They owe $37 trillion and rising, and they don't even, it's pathetic. It's just pathetic. And they're spending money like crazy. They're giving money still to foreign countries. We have no vested interest to do that to foreign countries. And we really need to pull that back. But again, it's unconstitutional and it's against we the people, and it's against the country to create such a bad financial situation. And that's why democracies are so bad. There's quotes in a lot of historical documents that say the biggest problem with democracies is that once they figure out they can vote for themselves money out of the treasury, they just die and rot from bad fiscal policies. And that's what we got. The Congress is implementing bad fiscal policy. I mean, I know President Trump is trying to tell them to do this, do that, do that. We had Doge, got to do this, got to do this, and they won't do it because they lose money. It still ceases to amaze me how somebody who makes $200,000 a year as a senator and congressman or whatever they make, and they're worth $25 million. It doesn't pass the smell test, people. We need to get back to the constitutionality of what the heck is going on. So that's all I can tell you. We really need to focus in on who we elect and try to, contact them and tell them, what's really going on here. I mean, it's kind of like we tried to get the audit of the Beacon Hill. We had 110,000 signatures to get a Beacon Hill audit, and they won't audit Beacon Hill because they said, oh, we already do it. But no, the state auditor has to do it, not some report that they do in the back room somewhere, which is what they're trying to say is, oh no, we're doing it. Yeah, well, they're doing it all right. But we need to hold their feet to the fire. Everybody screams and cries about a constitutional crisis and all this stuff about what Trump is doing, what the Republicans are doing, what Congress is doing, what this bill is doing. But the real constitutional crisis is we the people need to wake up and hold our leaders accountable to really follow the Constitution and really protect and defend our constitutional freedoms. I mean, it's pretty sad when some Congress people say that, your right to keep guns are not even in the Constitution. It's like, well, we'll learn about that. The whole concept of the Bill of the first 10 amendments, the first Bill of Rights was all about holding on to was the states wouldn't sign it unless the state never touched any one of those first 10 bills, okay? So, all right, so that's going to be it for this show, but let's just remember, next show we're going to be going over, let's see, we're going to go over the Supreme Court do's and don'ts, and then the real reason for the Bill of Rights, which is really a whole eye-opener for people. So, when we talk about the Bill of Rights and what it really means and how that happened, it's all because no one wanted to sign the Constitution until they protected those rights. And the first two, the freedom of speech and religion and the guns, those are the big two right there. Congress shall make no law, and they shall not infringe upon. All right, that's it for this show. We'll see you next month. Good night, Jervis.